Good stuff. We're ready to go. Glasses at the ready. The first statement. Most marketeers know what good creative is and looks like. We've got to disagree. Yes. Who says disagree? Let's go.
That would be myself. I might move up as people convince me, but I'm going to start with like in-house people. No offence to any of the brands or in-house people that are here, but I think the creative for the industry is so high. Yeah, I don't think that people actually realise what good creative looks like until someone's actually done it and they realise it, right? Because I don't think anyone has got the balls to put out good creative, and it comes down to how much bravery you have, and I just don't think it exists with most marketeers.
Who's on the fence?
I'm on the fence. I kind of agree with what you're saying. There's a distinct lack of bravery in the industry, but I'm reading the question more as like brilliant creative demands to be recognised. I feel like there's certain campaigns that just unanimously everyone's like, yeah, they smashed it. That's so good. And I think there's a lack of bravery for more of those to exist, and that's a shame. But I feel like every now and then you just get special work that comes along, and everyone, you can't help but just sit back and applaud. I love that.
I wonder if that creative is actually as good as we think it is, because I would say creative is now made for the thought leaders on LinkedIn to give feedback the next day on what they think, as opposed to the actual consumer that we want to consume that creative and understand that creative. And I think the guys in the first panel said this, we sort of operate in this very real bubble of believing that we're more important than we are, that is kind of co-signed by platforms like LinkedIn, where everyone basically repeats the same thing, that whether we realise it or not kind of socially conditions us to believe that that was good, as opposed to the effectiveness of how that creative landed with the consumer that we are trying to acquire, attract, or whatever that might look like. So I think the actual role of creative has become quite confused if you work within this space versus the actual people that we want to buy based on the story that we tell.
I agree. I think that there's a few things in that statement that I think maybe confuse this a little bit, like most marketers and also what is good creative in the first place. Because I think you have to differentiate what is creative versus what is creative in the context of a brand. And so I think that marketers who know what they're trying to achieve within the audience in which they're trying to target know what good creative looks like, because it will be pushing the needle in the things that they are measuring in terms of what makes success for their brand. However, in terms of creative, I think most people know, like for me, what makes good creative in the first place is less about whether it's it's got that craftsmanship to it, or whether it's got a particular story that it's trying to tell, whether it's moving brand metrics in a certain direction. It's about whether it makes you feel something. And I think most people can look at something and say, yes, regardless of those kind of like nuances within it, I feel emotionally connected to this piece of work. So I think there's what makes good creative, there's what pushes the needle from a marketing point of view. I think if you know your stuff from a marketing lens, you know what good creative is, because it's pushing those metrics for you. But I do think there's some nuance in there. So go on, is anyone moving?
I'm sticking to my guns. In fact, I'm actually going
Second statement. Most people claiming to be experts on social have never built anything real. Download my playbook for $10. Oh, did that comment change that? Let's go with disagree. Ian.
Well, I actually didn't hear your comment. What was it? Can you repeat?
Download my playbook for $10. So Ian, go. You disagree with the statement.
I think obviously there's a lot of linked influencers, no shade on Group 1.
Ouch! That was a bit savage.
We're in a world where...
They've left the venue, man. They're in the bar.
Yeah, they've gone. There's a lot. I think there's probably a fair few in the pack who have some degree of expertise and skill that kind of almost gets a little bit warped by the algorithm. People start to pander to what they think is going to perform and get likes, and it starts to skew. And it's a bit like a musician, I guess, whenever you stop writing for yourself and you start writing for what you think the audience wants you to hear. I think there's a lot of people like that on LinkedIn who actually have marketing shops and have kind of got lost in this gravy of opinions and have started to kind of almost misrepresent themselves a little bit. So that's why I'm putting a disagree. I also stated before I came on this that if everyone slides to strongly agree, I'm going to disagree and figure out
whether
why
you
afterwards.
believe it or not. Let's go to strongly agree.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like those... I feel this is a bit of a cliche, but I do genuinely believe that a lot of the people that are doing very good work in the brand and creative space are very busy doing the work in the brand and creative space. And I feel like we often don't hear those voices. What we'll hear is maybe one or two who might say something that's vaguely interesting, and then everyone else piles on with kind of variations of that point of view, and then it ends up just becoming this kind of slop of opinions that have a lack of nuance and, to be honest with you, a lack of true understanding of how that then applies to brands is what I would say. I think there's a lot of people out there that have built their platforms on having opinions rather than building them on things that actually weight.
How do we get those people on the stages at these events more and more?
But I think we've become, I said this yesterday and I said this before I came on, the loudest people on LinkedIn are normally the brokest, and I believe that. As soon as you start telling me a course,
That kind of hurt a little.
I've switched off. I have no desire to pay for a subscription or anything like that, especially if you don't have the receipts to show me what you have built. LinkedIn, people became LinkedIn famous because they knew how to write a hook. That was it. That's what blew it up, which is why everyone's so pissed off now that their reach has been decreased, right? Because you're being asked to come with more. And again, LinkedIn isn't marketing. Like it's a platform, it's a distribution channel that was originally professionalism, and then Gen Z kind of rewrapped it in lockdown, and we all sort of came out and went, oh my God, we need a personal brand to exist in this world. You don't, to the point, some of the best people doing the best work, you do not know who they are. However, to your point, I'm a LinkedIn top voice, so to your point around the group before, I love it and hate it in equal measure, but from a business perspective, it is one of our best cosigns for when we go into procurement and everything else. Like the term personal branding, I do think is incredibly wanky. I think it's become oversaturated. Not everybody needs a personal brand because not everyone has a personality to drive a personal brand. That's the fundamentals of what it's meant to be does not exist in everybody. Not everyone should be on camera. Not everyone needs a microphone. So I think there are levels and a lot of nuances within that. And to Emily's point, sorry, I probably said too much. That's going to need to be edited.
Not editing. You just go, Paul.
Sorry.
I don't think you said enough. Look, LinkedIn's great. It's taking some heat, right, in this room tonight. I think the problem is with this label of expert. Right, I think that's the problem with it, because there's loads of amazing creators, founders, people that I follow on LinkedIn, people I check in with daily on LinkedIn, not like check in with them personally on their well-being, I just check in on their feeds. That'd be weird. And it's an appointment to view, right? I look out for their content. But, you know, as someone who's been trying to do some bit of personal branding, because it is good for your business on LinkedIn.
It is.
I've been hit by LinkedIn, but, you know, trying to get me this expert voice, top voice badge, right? And it's fake, right? Because actually there's a way of gamifying that. You could go on, and when they were handing them out, the people who were giving them first access, or who were offered first access, all you should do is like post in 1 week 5 times every day, and like a certain amount of posts, and you were sent then this notification saying you are now a top voice. Do you want to put this on your profile? And that was it. And it was like, honestly, this was told by my personal branding expert. So that is effectively buying gaming the algorithm to have expertise. So I think the label of it is difficult, but I think it's a place which is full of experts, but the label sucks.
I tell you what I'd be far more interested in seeing, actually. I mean, I think that expert is a difficult thing anyway, because so much of the great work that comes out of brands and agencies is a full team of people. What I would be really interested in seeing is teams that come from, whether it's agency or brands, coming together to deliver case studies on work that has either done incredibly well or work that has failed. And I think what you'd get out of that would be something that was far more interesting to see, because there's so much work that is based on the dynamic of teams that come together and the environments in which they exist, which I think that you can't really just give that kind of voice in a LinkedIn post or a Substack. Like, there's so much to it. That would be interesting to me, to see those differences of opinions and how work came to be in the real world, with kind of real world challenges, parameters.
Yeah, because the thing that we don't see on LinkedIn is the great idea that you took to the client versus what got signed off and went out the door. And there's such a big disconnect within that when people come on and critiquing, and it's like, well, actually that budget probably started at 500,000 and ended up at 150,000. So every stage it got watered down. And that's the bit that people don't seem to acknowledge on those platforms when they are critiquing other people's campaigns. And actually, Wes and I were talking about this before he came on, but we never see their work. Like, that's the interesting thing about that space. When they were first giving out top voices, you could write about everybody else's stuff and go viral as long as you were within the first 10 people to post about it on the platform. That's changed now, and obviously they're trying to lean more into expertise with the algorithm, and that's why I kind of like that the reach has decreased, because I think it forces people to actually demonstrate that they are experts. And I think as well, we as watchers of it are very aware as to what is AI written. You can see the structure, it's very clear when you're reading the language, how it's put together, who is that? And I think that's, we need to get back to a world within marketing and advertising where you actually have to be good. You actually have to be good, because you just have to be able to write a hook now to get into a procurement process. And that's a problem. But then I do think you get found out quite easily, if that makes sense, as soon as you get to cred stage or whatever, that there is that problem up front, in my humble opinion.
You'll never spot me with AI because I have so many typos in my LinkedIn posts, it can never be AI.
Oh, but I think that's really genuine. It's lovely. I love seeing a typo these days. I love seeing some poor grammar.
Yeah, poor grammar. Bring it back, right?
Bring it back. Make poor grammar happen again.
Misspell some words, please.
Poor Beth and Chris have to decipher my messages and chats every day. It's a nightmare from them. Most social media engagement is meaningless and doesn't drive real business results.
Fence.
Let's start with the fence.
I don't work in social, right? It's part of my job.
Why are you here?
Part of the remit.
Why are you here?
Where'd you find this guy?
Because you called me at 5 o'clock and someone pulled out, remember?
Yeah. It's not true.
Right, no, what I mean is I'm not looking at the dashboards, right, every day, judging the metrics and I'm not doing that. I look at it as a consumer, and it's part of my remit as a PR professional. So, yeah, to me, I can't make that definitive decision, because someone will shoot me down and say, well, actually, we've seen an X amount of conversion from a post and a real uplift in sales because of this and this. That's great, but I don't see that. So that's why I'm on the fence.
Who is slightly off the fence? We're in disagree.
Yeah, I'm in disagree. I just think if I'm a social media professional, I think that most social engagement is meaningless. That's a pretty difficult position to be in. Obviously, some of it is a bit meaningless. You have to acknowledge that for sure. But I feel like the measurement always catches up to what you're actually trying to do, which is be important in people's lives, like make stuff that they actually care about, shift the dial in here somewhere. A lot of the time, the measurement takes a long time to catch up to that because it's such an unquantifiable thing. But we had an interesting conversation earlier about comments and stuff. And I just think if you're a brand who can show up in a comment section, 500,000 to 1 million likes, showing up comedically with your own tone of voice and relating it back to the brand, that has to be doing something for your brand.
How do we measure it? That's
exactly. That's the $1 million question. How do we measure it? But I feel, do I agree with the statement, most social engagement is meaningless? There's no way I can agree with that in this industry. I think I would go and find another job if I thought that.
Well, I put strongly disagree, but I can't remember the statement. If you could just read that out again for me.
The statement is, Emily is really bad at listening. Most social media engagement is meaningless and doesn't drive real business results.
So I think for my own mental health, would have to believe that not every piece of engagement is that deep, because otherwise you would overthink every single thing that you posted. However, I do think that it's really important to understand that engagement, particularly when you're looking at a brand and you're looking at a brand long term, engagement will always indicate the perception that you're driving of that brand. So the results may not necessarily be what you have intended, but I think it's really important to pay attention to every time you are generating engagement within a space or on a comment or in a video or whatever it is, you are seeding those micro moments that inform people what to think of your brand. So I think it's really important with every piece of engagement to be very clear on, does that actually drive the perception of this brand that I am trying to achieve long term? Because if it doesn't, then yes, it's meaningless in terms of driving the results you're after, but it is driving results. It just may not necessarily be the result that you intended.
Yeah, I think, again, sorry to come back to your point that you made before, I have quite a large social media following purely by accident, and 95% of pitches that we go into or inquiries that we get will mention my TikTok or my YouTube. we will put up a video on something, and I get off people in my LinkedIn DMs if I've done a video about their brand that they didn't agree with. They come and tell me there's the good, the bad, and the ugly that sit within that. But if I'm sitting in front of my finance team, I can put a very clear line to it. But what I would say with that comes down to the quality of the content and understanding what your prospective clients and customers actually want to buy, what the challenges are within that business, and then how you essentially articulate that into something that makes them give you an inquiry. And I would say there's normally 5 videos that they've seen before we get an inquiry, but we have won some of our biggest clients and brands through my LinkedIn straight out the bat. And that could be from me proactively DMing people, telling them, like when we reached out to M&S, I wrote them a story to all of their heads of strategy around how as my career had grown, I'd moved from M&S basics and now I'd made it because I wear autograph. And I referenced different shoes that went with different jobs, and they all came back to me. And again, that's what they want. They don't want the, hi, great to connect. And I think that's understanding your ecosystem of this post is going to do this. And we track everything, right? So if I get certain likes from certain brands, I'm like, right, pop them into the spreadsheet. Are we engaging with them? And that's the thing, people are, because social media's changed so much, you're looking for instant gratification of getting a yes straight away. And actually, that's not what a conversion funnel looks like. That's not a cosign. That's not the journey of how people make decisions of what they're going to buy or who they're going to hire. Mm-hmm. There is a much bigger job that sits around that as to how you get through those 10,000 messages that they get every day to make you a consideration over a period of time. And I think that's where perception is totally warped, is because the expectation, because you can give a like, is that you get something straight away. You have to earn that part. And that's the bit that people don't invest in the same way as they did in the 90s and the early 2000s, because we didn't have all these tools to track us and tell us what is doing what.
Yeah, I think it's also the danger of chasing a large audience over one that is engaged and saying the right things about you. So you can't deny the power of dark social, word of mouth, and all of that comes from the perception that you're driving through those pieces of content that you're putting in, day out, that really inform that brand position for whoever it is you're working for. And actually, I think having that level of detail in what you're doing, you couldn't do that if you had an audience of 10, 20 million people.
And understanding the communities that you don't see. So for us, a metric that we can never actually quantify is, did they share that in their WhatsApp group? Did that make the girls' WhatsApp group? Because that straight away is 15 people, and it's that cosign of, honey trusts it, we all trust it. And that's the bit that you can never measure because you can't see that, right? That gate-kept community is
and it
vital.
Sticks. That sticks. I think
that's worth so much more, isn't it?
Right, than a reshare on a public platform.
Exactly.
Both ways, though.
That's what I'm saying. We try to, when we get people, if we do an activation, there's a big queue, and my team walk down the queue and say, how did you hear about this? Someone will say, put it in the WhatsApp group, read about it in PR week, saw it on LinkedIn. We try and track that, but it is an immeasurable metric that is actually the most valuable, but you'll never see it.
I think it's interesting when we talk about it sticking, it's both ways. I don't know if anyone else in this room has had the pleasure of being cancelled online. I certainly have a number of times. But that will stay with you I know you definitely have.
Too many times.
And that will stick with the brand that you work for or the creator that you work for years after that point. And that's not to scare anyone about the dangers of being cancelled, but it's more to say, like, that perception piece is probably one of the most important things when it comes to thinking about your social and thinking about your social strategy and what is important for you or the brand that you're working for.
Charlotte brought up something really interesting, but you also actually proved where it can go. You are actually trying to build attribution against how you're building on social, which you're making it measurable off the vanity metrics. And I think that's something that's missing here. And even outside of not seeing what's happening and what's shared to the WhatsApp groups, there has to be surely ways that we start putting together ways to measure and research. And examples of that can be surveys. Surveys most big brands have big market research. Can we not get those questions? What's the problem you're solving? What's the challenge you have? And where are they seeing these messages happening? That can be done. So anything you can build to have those little extra signals to go beyond all of that great reach, it's actually changing people's minds, and the platform that's doing it is social. We've got to go beyond it, and that's a really good example of you're actually looking at it. If I invest in this channel and I do it in a certain way, I am now seeing conversions. So for every time I post, I'm getting X number of leads, and it's showing success signals beyond just Charlotte now has over 100,000 followers on TikTok and is getting millions and millions of views, and she's fantastic.
I think it's potentially as well, social to me belongs in the brand department.
Yes.
And I think for too long, social channels have been measured as if they were a performance marketing channel. And that's not what I think their true purpose is for.
This is a great segue. So let's reset the glasses and we'll go with the next statement. Is it time to recouple the social media team back into the brand team? Emily, let's go.
Are we glassing?
Yeah, you should have glassed already. I'll glass you now if you don't move.
You didn't give us a prompt.
So I do have some nuance though, obviously. Yes, I do fundamentally agree that social belongs in the brand department, and I think that, as I said, for a long time it's been measured as if it were a performance marketing channel. I think that's had us chasing reach, likes, engagement, whatever, and not thinking about the perception that it drives and how it's more akin to things like events or IRL activations, brand activations, creative. However, the nuance that I want to put to this is that I still think that there is a very distinct skill set difference between brand marketers and heads of brand and brand strategy versus social media management. That is still a skill in its own right, and I think it's really important that we don't couple those two things together and forget that the people who understand the nuances of the platforms, the technicalities behind managing that, the algorithms and how that works, they still have a voice, and that's a really important thing. I've actually seen quite a few brands that are starting to kind of decouple their social creative from their social strategy piece, and that is where I think social is heading. But I do fundamentally agree that it has to be brought back into brand and have a place as a brand strategy piece.
Who went with strongly agree?
That was me.
That was you. Let's go then to on the fence. Who's on the fence?
That was me. This might sound terrible, but I think that brand is actually the weakest that it has ever been. And I think social has become a scapegoat for really terrible brand managers. And the problem with brand now is because it is being partly dictated by the metrics of success with social, where you're jumping on a trend or something reactive, no one's building brand, like proper die-hard DNA brand. If we go back to why Marks and Spencer's could have such an incredible reboot over the last 2 years, it's because they knew who the they were from the absolute base. They just knew that they needed to modernize and become more culturally relevant, which is why it was easy for them to make this shift within brand that then led through into social, because they knew who and what they are. We now have brands being created purely for essentially sale to a private equity or something, 5 years growth, as opposed to, I don't believe that when Marks and Spencer's was started, there was a belief, we're going to flog this in 100 years. So the mindset around what brand builders do now is completely different. And I think social, in many ways, understands the brand marketing sphere quite often more than the brand teams, because the brand teams are operating within their bubble, whereas social teams are online consuming all day, every day, and understanding what works really well and what doesn't work really well. And I think, again, there was a period where brands could hide behind the sort of offline experience, but now the offline experience, the metric is measured by how many people then share it online. So the ecosystem has completely changed, but I think brands in a weird way are dying because we're never going to have the level of legacy that we've had from before the boomer generation, if you will, because these new brands are being built for quick growth, flog it and move on to the next one. So that isn't brand in what it originally was meant to be, in the place that it was meant to hold in society, and how it should influence how we consume and what it should stand for, even from an economical perspective. And the fact that I don't know if anybody watched Scandal with the Queen that is Olivia Pope, but there's a scene in this where she says the fish rots from the head. And I always bring that back to brands are dictated by what is going on from a political perspective that no one talks about. It's the reason that Mark Zuckerberg can get on Joe Rogan's podcast and say whatever, and everyone go into total disarray that they've got to get rid of their DEI and everything else, because everyone follows the clickbait of the story. They're not understanding that if you look at Walmart, that's now got terrible third quarter after they removed it and the black folk went, F you, we're not coming back. They don't understand that because they don't stand for anything anymore. It's a quick buck reactive to whatever nonsense is being said at the top, as opposed to the people that do stand firm in what they believe in. That's what brand used to be. That doesn't exist in the same way anywhere near anymore.
Going to pick a hole in one part there. Are social guilty of what you're saying in not building the brand equity by building things, distinct assets, cues, and being repetitive with some sort of strategy? There's a lot of chaos that goes on the platforms where we're running for everything to grab attention. Are we guilty of not sticking to the cause and actually building equity?
Well, I think they're reacting to stakeholders is the big problem. Stakeholders that aren't born of this generation as to how people actually consume is probably one of the biggest disconnects within brand at the moment. And then we probably all sit in meetings with CMOs that says, my 15-year-old daughter told me this was this, and suddenly the strategy is being changed to do that as opposed to the people that are the experts.
Yeah, I think for a lot of brands as well, social, not all of them, but for a good majority, I'd say social for a very long time has been allowed to just do whatever the it likes, because a lot of the people who were running businesses weren't actually online consuming the content that their brand was creating. I think that's going to change because you're starting to get this first wave of senior professionals coming through. I've been working in the social media industry for 10 years now, but there's not many people that have that level of experience. Like 10, 15 years is probably tops right now, because how long has Facebook been around realistically? Like you can't have more than that because that's how long the platforms have been running for.
I think it is the most malleable part of the brand, though, social, and it has to be in a sense, right? Because it's the canary down the mine, right? It's at the coalface of the consumer front end of the brand because people are spending their time on tablets and phones. So, you know, it needs to have this dotted line with the brand team and be in there 100% because decisions need to be made fast as hits the fan, right? You need to basically be next to each other so you can lean over, but it does need a certain amount of autonomy because it is so broad. You know, the paid folk who are looking at, you know, the paid side of stuff, they probably have less connection to brand, right, than the people who do it pumping out social creative. But if you look at like even the news today from, you know, I guess legacy media like Metro News, I think they made hundreds of job cuts today just from their website, and where they pump in all that investment, they're putting it straight into social creative. Right, so that shows you the investment in Metro's brand, right? And this is a brand that made its name in ink and print, right? Free on the streets, right? And that has died. So it's gone full circle now. It's gone from that to online, and they're de-investing from online and they're putting it into social. So yeah, for me, the happy marriage is, you know, you're sat in the same room. There's a dotted line and a communication agenda between those two departments, but they should be free. They should have an element of freedom, right? Because they respond at light speed to consumers, and you can't always like go over and tap someone on the shoulder or set up a meeting to discuss light speed changes that are happening that need to be responded to right now. With a brand team, you've got their head stuck in a brand book. So, you know, and that comes from trust, right? And that autonomy.
I do think our industry is really guilty though of shiny object syndrome, and when there's a new format or the algorithm shifts, it gets you reach, we pile onto it without really a second thought for what it means for the brand. So that is a thing. But having said that, like savvy social tactics that don't ladder up into any sort of semblance of a brand strategy just is fundamentally problematic. Like, what are you doing? What are you saying?
And
what
also just
story
a waste
are you
of
telling?
time.
But then,
You're not building a picture.
But then I think that
brand.
like this whole chaos theory, chaos content, chaos TikTok, I think is actually pretty amazing, right, for social, because it's just what the is it? It's like it's amazing. What is it? I don't know, right? But that can sit in brand, and it can sit under a wider strategy, but have the autonomy to go poof every now and again.
I think with the chaos piece, I think this is where it gets confusing, because I would say that that's short form entertainment as opposed to social. I think they're two different brackets that sit within that. And I think as well, it was the FT a couple of weekends ago that said that social actually peaked for Gen Z in 2022. And again, where we talk about brands not having the foundations and the fundamentals to exist without social, we will hit that point where people start to come off, because that's what the data really shows. 2022 was peak. It's going to become, for the next, if we take Gen Alpha, it's going to become really uncool to be on social media. We're going to be back to notebooks, and because everything goes full circle. And that's my issue with things like the Metro. It's such short-term thinking, because people don't know what to believe and what to do anymore, because they're chasing the next thing instead of building the foundations of a long thing.
Yeah, the pendulum always swings. I think that what's important to take from social is the fundamental principles that allow you to connect with the audience in a way that feels authentic to who they are and where they are and what it is, the perception that you're trying to drive. Whether that sticks on TikTok or, you know, Instagram or Reddit or wherever your brand is playing, or wherever your, you know, creators that you're working with are playing, that may change over time for sure, but those principles I think will stick, and I think they have to be linked back to brand in some way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we all complain about how busy we are, but we're off doing things that don't make any difference to any brand, you know.
If the one department or arm of your brand is going to f*** up, who would you want it to be? Social, or someone putting out a long form piece of content, or
whichever department's not me.
I mean, my main beef with the idea, I mean, I agree, but my main beef with the idea of recoupling social with brand is I've sat in so many rooms with so many brand strategists, clever brand strategists, and fundamentally, because they are brand strategists, their opinion kind of matters more than the social people in the room in an agency landscape. And so a lot of brand strategists who don't fully understand the thing that they're in charge of, they treat it like a broadcast channel, they treat it like a one-way communications tool and not a cultural engine. It's not a two-way thing. And so that's kind of limiting what social can be. So for me, if you're going to recouple social into brand, it needs to work for the
Both
social
ways.
people as well as it works for the
They need to be
brand.
respected.
Exactly. The disrespect in the industry for social has just gone on for so long.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think that partly about recoupling is this idea of like brand strategists have to understand social. I don't believe in this
you
day
need
and
us.
age. You cannot, in my opinion, be creating a brand that's driven for growth and not understand how social operates as a platform. If you are, like, I don't think you could be doing a good job of brand strategy.
This is good. You're just timing everything perfection. I didn't give them the statements in advance. Let's reset the glasses. There's a marketing, education problem with social media professionals. Lovely, you're just doing that to f*** with people. I don't.
Should I just move over here?
Let's start with agree, Paul.
I think there's a marketing education problem full stop, right, everywhere, which is kind of a good thing and kind of a bad thing. I think people grew up native to social media, so they get the platform, right, and that is their training ground, right. They don't need the education. They certainly don't need the marketing education that goes with it, because they're born on the platform. They know what the consumers want. They're native to it. It comes naturally. They understand the algorithm. They know how to serve up content in a way which consumers want to consume it. Now I can see how that's problematic for loads of brand managers, for loads of businesses, because there's a rule book there, slide across the table, day one. That's, read that, get up to speed on all the ins and outs of the industry, and make sure you're dotting the I's and crossing the T's. But it doesn't work like that, right? And I think certainly in my world, which is PR, when you come into the industry, maybe this is a sad thing with a PR education, i.e. you went to college, you went to university, and you got a PR degree. It's like, it's almost laughed out of town sometimes, right? When it comes on a CV, it's like, I don't want this person. I don't want someone who's trained in this shit. I want somebody who's making it up. I want somebody who goes on gut. I want somebody who's got the flair about them to understand the way the world works, not how it is academically on paper. So I think education is difficult, and particularly in social, because they are like the cavaliers of the world, right? We don't need this education. So, yeah, to me, what am I? Do I strongly agree with it or not? Hang on a minute, where am I? It's lovely to talk. But
Amazing.
Yeah, so I agree.
Before you move the glass, how do you make social media professionals think more strategically? So making better decisions, linking it back to something, doing it repetition. How can we make that better?
What I still love about social is that you can still test and learn, right? And you can still up and learn from it. I hope, and we live in a world where everyone realises that there's a human behind the posting, right? There's a human in the marketing department, and you're only human. So I think that that ability to test and learn in social is something we should remember, and it is a place where you can do that, because the algorithm moves on, the cycle moves on, the news cycle moves on, and stuff's forgiven. So I think that's great.
Let's go with another strong agree. Sure.
So I think that marketing, even removing the social generally at the moment, is pretty mid as a category with what is being produced wherever it's being distributed. I think part of the problem with that, again, is we have a generational issue. So when we talk about going to university and studying marketing, it's based on the old principles of how you build a funnel and everything else. Now, to a degree, some of those traditional models still work, but actually, if you are building a social first brand, or that's your lead channel for engagement, it's very different to what, and I don't want to say names, some of the iconic people that are forever on podcasts talking about things that were relevant 20 years ago understand to be. And we won't see that actual shift where education is valuable probably for another 20 years, because we don't have the knowledge to build what those people are still trading on, their legacy of what they did at a network agency in 1992. We don't have that proof point yet. And that's, sorry, again, I'm not saying names.
I think you've just said it without saying it.
Michael. But I think that until that kind of changes, I couldn't give a shit. For me, the best marketeers are the people that live and breathe how people are actually consuming. And we get challenged by some of our creative and our ideas because we go on gut, because the brand team can't get on board with how we knew that information and how we could forecast that was going to be the next thing, because they are following formulas. I'm not following a formula. I'm going to come with you with what I think's popping based on understanding where emerging trends come from and what's happening in the marginalised and communities that aren't acknowledged, that actually set the trends and influence and shape culture. And they're completely different things. You cannot get that from a degree, but you can learn how to build a funnel, what consideration is and everything else. So, but that shouldn't be more than a 6-month course. It's not a 3-year, 50 grand debt. That's just illogical in this day and age. Sorry. Just be quiet now.
I love that you put strongly agree and I put disagree, and I agree with everything you just said.
Come on over.
Well, you got to fight now, so come on, I'll move your glass.
So let me explain. So for me, social media professionals in 2025 are the definition of multi-hyphenates, right? So they ideate, they shoot, they edit, they post. They're already doing everything. Do I also want them to have an understanding of the marketing fundamentals as well? That would be lovely, but let them cook. Do you know what I mean? If you can just get an unbridled creative brought up on the internet who can just be weird online for brands, it's my job to then filter what makes sense for the brand. I have the marketing fundamentals. I can put parameters in place to make sure that things get shared with clients once they kind of make sense from the agency's perspective. Let them go off and be weird in a room for as long as possible without the expectation that they go and get a marketing master's.
So until we teach them how to speak the right language in the right room, we need some protectors for now till we get that education in place.
That's my view.
And the education is more on how we actually explain in CMO or C-suite speak crazy we're doing. It's 100%. Going to be tricky to convince them to invest more unless we do it.
The best ideas no longer win. That's not it. It's packaging for a board of directors now in an era where people are worried about their jobs and nobody wants to get fired. It is the how you present it over the best ideas now, because risk is so very low in brand, because what used to be the safe jobs at all the big tech platforms are no longer, and to Paul's point, Metro, you'd have thought, actually pretty good reach, free papers across the country every day. No, it's those safe things are no longer safe.
Yeah, the other thing is to win a can line as well, by the way.
The lens you put on the question is so right, though, of like, is the marketing profession, like the education, good today? And the answer is probably no. And it probably hasn't been updated in a very, very long time. You're studying dusty old textbooks from kind of outdated models. And they are, again, not to bang the drum, they're all talking from a broadcast perspective, talking one-to-many, not talking in a two-way kind of cultural engine way, which is, as we know, social is, and it's most powerful.
I think it's probably very telling as well. As someone who's paid their mortgage through social media management for the past decade, I ain't never taken a course in social media that's taught me a fucking thing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I've learned everything that I know through doing and through speaking to other people in the industry. I think to your point that you made earlier, I don't think we are going to see truly good education until you have people that have been through it for a long time. I also think the challenge with social media is that so many of, I keep hitting my mic, it's really emphatic with my hands. I think that because so many social teams who are very good at what they do are also very young, I think that that's quite common across a lot of industries and a lot of businesses. You also then have that trade-off always between people who have experience across multiple brands, multiple businesses, versus those who are entrenched in the platforms, who know what's popping up. I think that there's always going to be that tension, I think, personally, until maybe we're all back on notepads and reading books again. I don't know.
Can't wait.
So the education is more on how to actually convince people in the business that this is the thing and let us go play. So again, a little bit of market research, guys. Would an MBA in social media be a valuable thing in the future? Sounds about right. Some of the best agency talent is now going freelance, working with in-house teams, and that's a threat to the agency model right now.
I'm going to make this very UK specific. The UK to me is very much bad vibes at the moment. And I think that one of the things that, there's two things here, and I actually wrote a Substack about this. The freelance economy is total. You would think by the way that people were living on LinkedIn that they were fully booked and busy. Very few people are actually that booked and busy as to what is presented on LinkedIn. Other they simply would not have the time to sit there and write all those posts all day long. That is just the reality of time. And I think that the thing that people don't understand with, again, from the top is that when people are freelance, it removes any responsibility from institutions and governments to look after that people, right, of what you get from PAYE and everything else. So to me, the freelance movement is a little bit propaganda that has been driven by the people in charge because it removes responsibility from them. And I think that's the first bit. And marketeers have done a very good job at taking that propaganda and hyping it up and presenting it as freedom. Because, hey, I can work from Dubai, but I'm broke. And I think that there is like a really big difference between freelancers that are booked and busy and the ones that have drunk the Kool-Aid based on this new world of freedom. I think from an agency perspective, to my point around bad vibes UK, I think because the economy is so if you're an agency and you know how to leverage that properly and get the right people in and build the right collective around you and how you present that to a client, I think there's real value in that because clients still want the machine that is an agency. Certain clients, other people that are nimble and agile, they'll take the freelance, the 350 quid a day, job done. But there are some people that, to the point before around, who aren't looking to get fired and aren't looking to take risk. It's so much easier to hire an agency, be like, well, the agency f***ed it up, rather than I pick this freelancer and they f***ed it up. There is also that part that plays, again, stakeholders and where responsibility and accountability sits.
Are you saying a lot of freelancers are actually making their money off of LinkedIn sponsorship ads rather than doing what they're claiming to be doing?
No, I'm saying that people are making the world of freelance look... I think the world of freelance is being made to look busier than it actually is because of what people are writing on LinkedIn of the freedom that it supposedly gave them. I think it's a bit of a false narrative. I don't believe that many brands are swapping out agencies to work purely with freelancers. I don't think that model exists yet because it's still an agency. You still believe you're getting a body of people that will take on a role and a level of responsibility. So I don't believe that we've hit that point remotely yet.
It's too big of a risk, Paul.
I think I've sort of noticed an interesting trend which I think benefits agencies by brands like mopping up really good talent on the market. Because look, there's so much talent on the market, right? Mergers and like layoffs at a senior level just means that the senior talent market is flooded, right? To agency owners like us, I guess, that's wicked, right? Because you can pick up top people who probably want more flexible working, 4 days a week or whatever, or people who are experts in the field who might be multitasking across a few different things. Top talent at a decent price that small to medium-sized agencies can afford. Now, there's a trend I've noticed where actually those people might get snapped up by brands to do an interim role, basically head of PR, head of brand, head of marketing, whatever, and they're bringing in the agencies, which is great. And that's why it's so important, small world and, be nice to people, because that talent that you might have interviewed for a role in your agency and you didn't give it to them for whatever reason, like salary caps or maybe it just wasn't the right cultural fit or whatever the other reason it is, they come back 3 months later and they got in-house and they go, I'd love to brief you guys. So, and that's happened twice, right? And I know that's an anomaly, but I agree. I think agencies are indispensable, and so if you can bring in someone smart into the brand world who's been freelance talent, it doesn't diminish the agency. If anything, that becomes a bridge between the marketing department and the agency because that person knows the market, knows the good agencies, and can be fleet of foot to bring you in. So, until I get disproven in it.
Do you think the model, and particularly the pitch process and the billable hour setup, is causing way more headaches than it should for people to like the agency model more? Because there is a bit of friction out there on the entire model, the agility of an agency and how they can adapt versus a freelance or an in-house team. Us agencies are great at dressing it up, right, and adding zeros to budgets. We're really good at that.
That's how we make our money. Yeah, so I mean, like the bad ones, are obviously not us, right? But what was the question again?
Do you feel like the model is putting brands off and the attractiveness of in-house teams, the agility, the speed, the adaptability of freelance talent?
It depends on the
is
size of the
causing
agency,
headache.
it depends on the market.
Yeah,
it
I
depends on
think
lots of
that's because
variables.
I think billable hours and timesheets are utter. Our model is really built on output, and I think that again, that's where a lot of agencies are coming stuck at the moment, is because everybody needs results that you can buy. Death by deck is not the thing that people want anymore. They need to see the tangible outcome of what you've delivered. And we used to do based on day rates and things like that, and we straddle somewhere in the middle now. But my team know that metric for success is getting done and getting the win for the client. And we had a brand a few years ago that we did a campaign for, and it was the first time in like 100 years this brand that they had ripped up their brand guidelines. And 3 days before we went live, when we were doing the fit out, the senior team got into a bit of a panic about it. And I sent a text message saying, if I this up, don't pay me my fee. And sometimes I think you have to show brands, not always, that you will run into the fire with them. It can't always be what the agency wants in this billable time. If you want proper, deep, long-term relationships with people, you have to show them that you're in the boat with them as well. And sometimes that is a level of risk on the agency or consultancy side. I think for a long time, based on these big network agencies, we've been used to having our own way and the big stories in Campaign magazine and the 7-figure deals, and that just isn't the economy anymore, because people kind of took the piss with that to the point around adding another zero. Businesses want results. It's going to be the agencies that can actually give results. No one cares about billable hours. That can't be a metric anymore, especially with what AI and those other new platforms and things can do. You're going to be based on your strategy and what the outcome is, as opposed to all the lovely stories that you tell in between.
Yeah.
No one will smoke out a crap agency quicker than an ex-agency person who's gone freelance, who's been hired by a brand to hire an agency. So you're done. You're toast if you're lying, right? Because they know.
That I strongly agree with.
Yeah, it's even like the client speaker you send in an email, like as an agency person who's done that before, it's like, that's and been on the other side. I know exactly what's going on. They're panicking. They're trying to buy some time. They're trying
to find a freelancer to get the work done, mark it up by 30%, and then charge you extra.
Exactly.
But I don't think people are going in-house because they're fed up of doing timesheets. I think it is a money thing. I think until recently, top talent goes where the money is, and agencies up until recently have had more money than most in-house teams have, with the exception of the tech industry. And so we did see back in kind of like the mid 2010s, all the top advertising people going tech side. A lot of them came back, a lot of them stayed. I think we're kind of now in this new world where suddenly top roles in social are getting zeros added to the salaries, and it's great to see it. And finally, I think that is the reason why I've started to see a few people switch over to in-house, because the top talent are starting to realize that they don't have to work at an agency if they want to get paid properly. They can go in-house and work at a social brand who truly values social and understands the power of it.
Yeah, personally for me, the reason why I would have stepped, I was agency for the best part of 8 years, but the reason why I went brand side is because I got so off with them not being brave enough to punt. And I went across, it wasn't the money, it was, I need to prove that this is actually a thing that can work. So I need to go in and try and get the ownership to make change and maybe build proof that I'm somewhat good at this and can get there. Now, the first time I did it, failed completely. The second time, a lovely little airline came along and I got lucky. But like my legacy, and I'll milk every bit of it for the rest of my life, was based on being in there and having control. Because it's tough, and it's tough in the agency world to convince that there's a way of doing it.
Yeah, and legacies is something that you can't always get in an agency, but you for sure can find that in-house.
I mean, as someone who's been brand side since I left the womb, essentially, it seems very stressful being agency, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. You are fighting for your life most days.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fighting for my life in other ways, but I mean, yeah, I don't have an opinion,
There's
really.
an amazing freedom about it too.
I will say that I feel like it's very difficult to pick an agency for someone who's been doing it.
And is that down to the pitch process, like to make the decision? Like case studies, creds is one thing, but what would make you pick somebody that you think will have a crack at this and do a good job?
I think that, so, I mean, if you're talking about the pitch process generally, and I know that we're talking about whether or not it's broken, if that's coming up shortly or not, but I
Crack
think...
into it, talk now,
I think
we need
that,
to wrap up.
As someone who has never worked agency side, right, so I've got no clue how this thing is supposed to work, and no one ever, I think, helps guide in-house people through that unless you do have someone on the team who has also been in agency. So I think the pitch process is probably broken because fundamentally it is different every single time with every single agency and every single project, and it's very much like hiring. Like, you're trying to work out whether or not you feel like these people fit the values of the business that you're working for, whether or not they fit the particular credentials that you need for that particular project. It is an incredibly complex thing, which I feel like for hiring, when you're bringing people in, you get time to do that, you get really in depth, you get tasks, you get whatever you, and I know there's a conversation to be had around whether tasks should be in an interview or not, but I think they are helpful in some ways. I don't feel like you get that same level with an agency, and that's not necessarily because the agency doesn't want it. I just think there isn't a blueprint that you can follow that's expected. I also think that we don't pay agencies for their time when they're doing creative pitches, so therefore we don't necessarily always get the best that they can offer because it has to be done relatively rushed. So I think it's a very difficult process brand side to navigate, and I think one of the things that would be helpful is to have some kind of, maybe not standardization, but that upfront discussion about what do we want this pitch process to look like, so that you and I both get the right thing out of it. We can work out if you're right for us as a business, but equally, can you offer what it is that we're looking for? Because I feel like I've sat through so many pitches where I actually don't think we as a brand have done a good enough job articulating what it is that we're looking for, so that when that pitch inevitably comes back, I'm sat in a room going, well, that's not going to work. But how could it? Because we haven't actually outlined in a fully articulate brief what it was we wanted. We haven't even talked you through who as a brand we are, what we're trying to achieve. We're literally just throwing you out into the void and saying, go on, see what you can do with that.
And deliver it in 4 days.
Deliver it in 4 days, and no, sorry, that wasn't what we were looking for. But thank you so much for your time.
Suppressing, isn't it?
In favour of the counter argument, I would say, my former agency went on a generational pitch winning streak this year, won 7 major pitches in a row, and I think the people who the pitch process as it stands serves the least is the people who have failed to adapt to 2025 ways of working, who have stuck in their ways. They've decided that this is the way we pitch and we're not going to change it for anybody, and they've just failed to adapt and failed to kind of read the room and read the tea leaves. And I think that's great. It's great for people who are opportunistic and who are like, okay, we're going to tear apart what a pitch from this agency looks like and put it back together again in a completely new way, and hopefully surprise people and have a really different response and different offering to what everyone else is going to give. I do hate pitching for one-off projects. Do think that should get in the sea. And that anything aside from like a strategic or a production one-pager for a one-off project is all that's needed. But pitching for a monthly retainer, like we're going to have a long-term relationship together. I think the pitch model is alive and kicking.
All right, Paul, do you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think pitches are great just as a way of galvanising an agency into creating really good work and getting the team together, and the energy you put behind it, and the sell and the bells and whistles and the moment of theatre and the drama and the energy, all of that is wicked.
Oh, well, you could sell it to me.
Honestly, I love pitching, but the process is completely it's so top heavy. The brand has all the power. They invite far too many agencies. There is no consideration of the agency's time. I'm not looking at you particularly. There's no consideration of the agency's time. And these people go on LinkedIn and start saying, I'm looking for an agency, tag agencies beneath, and there's 193 comments.
That is actually so gross. I find that new thing so disgusting.
Stop wasting everyone's time.
Yeah.
Your time, your team's time, LinkedIn's time, everyone who answers time. It's ridiculous. Do your research. Show up properly in the way. So that's infuriating.
I apologise on behalf of every brand.
On behalf of the universe.
I'm so sorry, everyone.
So I find that before we even get to ghost pictures and ghost briefs, I find that incredibly frustrating. And I think agencies now also they're culpable too, right? Because we go for everything. Yeah. That's a nice brand. Oh, you see the budget attached to that? Let's just go for it. Let's do a year, right? And we're all guilty of that. And we should be more discerning about it. And we should say no more. right? And actually, if you think about when a pitch comes through, a brief, what you do is you read it, you go, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we got those capabilities. Oh yeah, we're brave and all this. And you put yourself in your head into the mould of the brief already. So you're already lying, right, before you've even answered it. That's not you, right? But you've just gone for it because it's going to look good on the website, right? Or because you can't, because of the money, whatever. So it's a lie. All that happens, you dressed up your agency that way, and you might get to win it, and then you start dating, and you realise, all the scaffolding will fall off, and it's not the person they signed up with, right? The brand, and it's like taking off the dress and go, f it out, right? and that's it. It's just fraught with wrongness. So I don't know who's going to fix it. I'd love to be at the spearhead of doing it, but unfortunately, I am just a sheep on a caravan going through the desert without the ability to change it. But let's go.
What a way to wrap it up.
What a way to wrap it up. Listen, can we give a round of applause to Quick Trade?